All right, let's get this done here. Admit everybody. All right, don't want that. All right. All right. Branding students, we have a special treat in store for you. This is my friend, John, who we've never met before. This is the first time we've actually are seeing each other and having a conversation. We are friends. We met on marketing Twitter when it was the greatest marketing community in the world. And sadly, Elon Musk destroyed that. Amongst other things, he's trying to destroy the country. That's another subject altogether. Anyway, so John is like me. If you remember the first day we met, I said there's two kinds of people in this world, those who love marketing and those who don't yet know they love marketing. And John is fully on our side of loving marketing. He has held every important role. He's the chief marketing officer. He's run businesses as a business director. He's had his own agencies. He's a teacher. He's done guest lectures before as well as taught. Again, he is multi-talented, multi-versatile, and God, he knows brands inside and out. So I'm going to shut my fat trap and turn it over to my friend John Lyons. Take it away, or Hat, as I like to call him, and he can fill that you in later on that whole story. All right,
Oh
take it
wow.
away, John.
So I'm gonna have to try and live up to this, right? Hi everyone. So I'm here today to talk about brand, and I'm gonna need to click there. So I'm calling this Brand the movie. Okay, it's Brand the slide deck, let's be honest. So Tom's just introduced me a little bit, but here we are here, a little bit about me. So I am an absolute marketing nerd. I've been in this game for 20 plus years. I learn every single day. I'm reading, I'm listening, I'm talking, I'm discussing. And what I'm about to show you here today is something that I've been working on for the last year or so because I think it's important and it fascinates me and I struggle with it. Um, as it says here, I also have a hat. So the reason for the hat being mentioned and me wearing the stupid thing on my head in the first place is this hat accidentally became my distinctive asset. It became a brand asset of John Lyons. Um, it was a lockdown thing. I used to wear a baseball cap. My baseball cap got ruined. I couldn't go to a store to buy a new baseball cap. I ordered something online and it turned up looking like this. Look, it's ridiculous. I'm far too old to be wearing a hat this style. So I took a picture of it, posted it up onto marketing Twitter, and said, Jesus, I'm too old to wear this, right? And everyone said, No, we want you to wear the hat and take pictures of the hat. And ever since then, the hat has become a thing. The hat has a name, it's called Hat. But as well as it being a joke, it has opened doors for me. I can go to events, I can go to festivals, and instead of people kind of looking sideways and going, "Oh, is that guy that I had a conversation with on LinkedIn?" They all know immediately it's John Lyons, the guy who's into marketing effectiveness. And so I've been able to meet and be introduced to some of the people I'm going to be talking about and quoting today because of the stupid hat. So don't let your ego get in the way of a good brand asset. I hated this hat for a while. Now I'm learning to live with it. Why is this not working? There we go. So the first thing I'm going to talk about, in fact, before I go into this, I'm going to give a little bit of background to this. So I was speaking to the chief, the marketing lead of an organization that promotes marketing effectiveness. That's how they make their money, marketing effectiveness. So a lot of the things that I'll be talking about and advocating here is stuff that they charge people to teach them about. Now, this person said to me that they were struggling to get the board to agree to pay to move funding from performance marketing into brand marketing. They just wanted performance marketing, which blew my tiny little mind. And so I've gone off and I've reread some of the classics, which you'll know from Professor Tom, um, and found some other things so that I can try to make a consistent case that marketers can use to non-marketers to convince them of the need for investing in brand. That's what all of this is about. Starting though with what even is brand. So this guy, I think he's got a bookshop or something. He says that your brand is what other people say about you when you're not in the room. But what I like about this is that unlike most quotes about brand, he's putting it firmly in the mind of the customer rather than in the hands of the business. Your brand isn't what you want to project, it's what people have in their minds. And you can influence that, but you can't control it. Now, I say a brand is anything which brings your product to mind. So it can be a color treatment. It can be a combination of colors. I'm sure you all know where I'm going with this one now, and I'm sure you will see in the example. It can be a graphical treatment. It can be the shape of the product or the packaging. It can be a typeface. It can be a slogan. It can be a sound. It can be a sonic device.
Oh, yeah.
It can be a season.
Holidays are coming. Holidays are coming.
Let that one go. It can be all of those things and more. Now, the one thing that I haven't shown on the screen, because I don't think I need to, is the logo. So, of course, a logo is part of a brand. We all know that. But lots of people assume that a logo is the brand. It's not. All of these things, anything which brings to mind a product or service, is part of the brand. Now, brand, crucially for marketers, is the difference between the product and the commodity. So I can charge more for a branded bottle of Evian water than I can for a glass of tap water. Not only can I charge more, but your prices are less likely to fluctuate. You've got elasticity. So you can stand your ground on price with a stronger brand. The strongest brands can maintain their price point. And in fact, the best brands out there can maintain a price point that's beyond, way, way beyond the production costs. Whereas the weakest brands or no brand can't. And you can see this yourself by just going into a supermarket, a grocery store, and seeing the difference in price between a known brand and a home brand version. So going back to Coca-Cola, if I go to one of our local supermarkets here and I look at the home brand cola, it's about a third of the price of Coca-Cola. I'm still buying Diet Coke every single time because I know what I'm getting from it. I know I'm not going to be disappointed by it. And another thing that's worth saying about brand is that people tend not to buy what the best option. They tend to buy the least shit option. So it's called satisficing. They choose something they know that's not gonna let them down. I know I'm a diabetic. I know that if I go into a store or if I'm in a quick service restaurant and I see that silver tin with the little white wiggle, that I'm going to be okay with that. I'm not going to have to read the ingredients. I'm not going to have to taste it and decide if I like it. I know immediately where I am with that. It's the power of brand. Why does this keep doing this to me? The other thing is that brand makes it easier for people to buy you in future. So as Ehrenberg Bass has shown, and Jenny Romniak and Byron Sharp, that marketing is in a large part about the balance between mental availability and physical availability. So if something isn't available to pick up off shelf, it's not physically available. But if you don't have it in mind as being a suitable solution, it's not mentally available. Now, if you've got that brand mentally available to you, you can quick shortcut when you get to the shelves, when you get to the aisles. You don't need to stand and think. Nobody wants to think when they're shopping. Okay, maybe when I go clothes shopping, stuff like that. But most people, you just want to grab the least crap option and get the hell out there and get on with your life. And brand makes it easier for you to build, for people to build those memory structures and for therefore to buy you in future. Oh, by the way, I should have said, anyone's got any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat or shout out at any time. I'm happy to stop and take questions as we go along, or we can do them at the end. If we do them as we go along, you're just going to hear this dumb British accent the whole way through, and it's kind of fairly flat and monotone, right? And by the way, yes, I do have a cup of tea. I'm British, but please feel free to drop anything in. So, why is brand important? Well, people don't buy brands that they don't know, or rather, they very rarely buy brands they don't know. So this is a piece of research that I found recently from Yamil Kursa. She's a professor in Turkey who specializes in research in kind of marketing and consumer behaviors. And this is kind of the closest I've really found to there being an empirical piece of evidence that shows that people need to know a brand before buying. And what this shows is the dotted line in the middle is a perfect match between brand awareness and purchase intent. What we have here is really quite a high one. So it's kind of almost 2/3 of the way up. So there's a strong correlation between purchase intent and brand awareness. Of course, we also know just from our own lives, right? You rarely buy something you don't know when there's an option. So, if you walk into a store, you're really thirsty and there's a whole load of water. Let's say you're abroad on holiday, you don't know any of the brands, you just grab whatever, right? But when you see a brand again, you know you're not going to be disappointed by it. So people buy brands that they know. We also know from the double jeopardy law. So again, this is Byron Sharp, How Brands Grow, which is what, I don't know, 15 years old now. Um, and I'm old enough to remember when that came out and my mind being literally blown. I was at a shopper marketing conference, I hadn't heard of it, and three speakers in a row hadn't had time to see each other's kind of speeches, but three speakers in a row got up and talked about this little red book. And I went away, I read it, and at the time I was working in an agency that specialized in loyalty programs. And I read it and kind of called the CEO and went, shit, we need to rethink everything we're telling people. We've got it wrong. It was that powerful. And it maintains. So the double jeopardy law is one of the strongest things that come out of it. And what it shows is that the biggest brands have the highest penetration, i.e., they sell to more people than the smaller brands. But not only that, they have higher purchase frequency per buyer. So not only do they sell to more people, people are more loyal to those brands. And if you look at the table there, so this is obviously we talk about the toothpaste brands in China all the time, right? It's just an everyday conversation for all of us, whether we're in the US or the UK. But I think the two certainly at the top, I think we have pretty much worldwide, Crest and Colgate. Sensodyne's pretty big over here. Slightly surprised that that's at the bottom, but there's a whole lot of stuff there that I don't know at all. But I don't think it's a coincidence that there's two global monoliths at the top here. It's the power of brand again. And the 95-5 rule. So this is John Dawes at the Ehrenberg Bass Institute, and he works with the B2B LinkedIn Institute to come up with the 95-5 rule, which is probably the most quoted rule of the last 18 months, because it's kind of groundbreaking, really, because it shows that of your target market, of all of the people that are buying or will be buying from your category, either from your brand or a direct competitor, or at least someone that services the same need, only 5% at any given time are in buying mode. And what's important about that is it means 95% of people that are seeing our comms, seeing our brand, seeing our advertising, are not going to immediately pick it up. They're not going to pick it up in the short term either. So there is an importance to get that 95%, to build that mental availability with that 95%, so that when they're in the 5%, when it's their turn to be in the 5%, you have more chance of picking them up. Because every time you do performance-based marketing, all you're able to pick up from is a maximum of that 5%. But the amount of that 5% you get will depend on the brand awareness that they have of your brand compared to competitors. So the long and the short of it. This is Les Burnett and Peter Field. I have spoken to Les Burnett about this research as well, and sense checked a few things with him. They are known as the godfathers of effectiveness, and their book, The Long and the Short of It, is, I think, 10 years old now, maybe 11 years old now. And what they showed, they went through the entire database, the IPA database of effectiveness, and they were able to show and prove that the most effective campaigns long term for brands were where there was a on average balance of 60% investment in brand building, long term marketing, and 40% in performance short term marketing for mature businesses. Okay, this does slide slightly, but certainly what we see is that the brand building builds long term incremental growth. The sales activations pick up people that are in market now. So that picks up the 5%. So each time on this graph, you see the spike 5%, 5%, 5%, 5% at max. But the brand building growth follows along. Now, what this graph doesn't show, but this one does, is that the sales activation improves as well. So your performance marketing improves as your brand building grows, because obviously you're more mentally available. So it's going to improve your sales activation. So this chart here is by the brilliant Tom Roach, who came up and introduced himself to me at the Festival of Marketing a couple of years ago because he recognized this hat. I've read his work for years. The guy's brilliant. I have no right being recognized by Tom Roach. It should be the other way around. Stupid hat, right? But this was by Tom Roach and Dr. Grace Kite, who is a econometrician. And as I said, it's pretty much the same as Pete and Les's, but they show that sales activation improves. And there's been some recent work done by Walk that has also talked about that kind of effect of the two working together more strongly. So all of that proves that brand investment works. It's going to drive incremental revenue, but we still get to that hard point of how do I quantify the brand investment? How do I persuade the CFO or the CEO to let me spend this money on something that they might not see the return on in a year, maybe 18 months, maybe 3 years? Because here's the real kind of problem that we have. Performance marketing can be switched on or off in seconds. You can start, let's say, a pay-per-click campaign. You can start a pay-per-click campaign. You can live look at the stats, look at how much you're bidding, look at the performance, put more into it, take money out of it, switch it off. If you're not getting the return on investment, which is a short-term metric, you can't do that with long-term. So what we need to do is basically use these frameworks that exist, but use these frameworks that exist to make sense of and create an expectation and onboard people into how brand marketing works. And there's a couple of ways that I do that. So the first one is with brand tracking. So this is where we do a survey of people who buy from the category. They don't necessarily know which brand we're representing. So I've got one out at the moment for a jewelry retailer here in the UK. And we're asking them, it's a jewelry retailer who sells on TV, right? So the qualifying question is, do you ever or have you ever buy jewelry from a TV channel or something similar? They don't know who we are. There's a number of companies that do this. And what that allows us to do is then build a funnel to understand how they see not just my client's brand, but all brands in that category or all brands that fulfill the same need, and then compare them. So this isn't a digital marketing funnel. It's not an attribution funnel. This isn't people going from website through to search and blah, blah, blah. Got no time for any of that, frankly. This is a marketing funnel. It's about bucketing people about their mindset. So how many people are aware of the brand? How many people would consider doing business with the brand? How many people would choose the brand as their preferential choice if they were to make a purchase today? And what we're able to do with this is compare it to the category norm. So on the diagram I've got here, the dark gray is, in this case, this was my client who was an agency. So the dark gray is their position. So you can see awareness to the white outline, which is the category norm. Awareness they're doing quite well on, but they completely crash in consideration. They regain a bit in preference, but not enough. So looking at this, quite clearly, we have a problem with consideration. If we look over to the right-hand side, we've got attributes. So this again is asking people on a kind of scale of 1 to 7, 1 to 5, how much they agree with certain statements. So, the agency is creative, the agency is expensive, and we do that for all of the competitive set as well as our client agency. And what you can see here on the overlay is my client has been shown they're scoring really highly and above the category norm for responsive. They're scoring really highly for trustworthy. They're doing pretty good for effective. They're really low down on expensive, but that's a good thing because we don't want to be seen as expensive. In fact, this might give us scope to charge a little bit more because we're not seen as particularly expensive compared to others. But where they're absolutely tanking is creative. So we've got two options as a business. We either make an operational change, which means investing in better creative, or we lean into where we're strong. And so, as well as seeing the attributes from compared to all of the companies in the category, we'll also find out the purchase drivers. So if we find out that actually having a trustworthy and responsive agency is more important to the buyers than having a creative agency, we lean into those. And that again will help us grow our market share. And the other thing is excess share of voice. So this is back to Uncle Les, as I like to call him, Les Burnett again. And this piece of work goes back before the long and the short of it. And this talks about excess share of voice. So it compares market share and share of voice. So market share is the amount of spend that you are taking in from a category. So of all of the cola brands, actually not cola, beverage, of all the beverage brands, Coca-Cola's market share is how much spend on beverage they are bringing in. Okay, it's their share of the market. It's pretty straightforward. Share of voice traditionally was based on media spend. Now, that's a fundamentally flawed way of doing it. And I'll tell you why. There's been some fantastic research done recently by System One that shows that in the UK alone, bearing in mind we're about the size of one state, okay? In the UK alone, the cost of dull advertising means that you would have to spend £10 million more on average on media buy for a dull advert to achieve the same results as you would do with a creative advert. And so media spend doesn't really cut it, but what does cut it, and what's being used more and more now and is a lot more accessible for all of us, is share of search. So share of brand search. If people are looking for your brand online, they're aware of your brand, okay? And the degree of which they're looking for your brand compared to other brands gives you your share of search or your share of voice. Now, if your share of voice is lower than your market share, you're likely to start losing market share. If your share of voice is higher, you're going to grow market share. The important thing here is not just that exists as a principle, but we have metrics behind it. So on average, for every 10% or every 10-point difference between share of voice and market share, your brand will look to grow in the next cycle 0.5%. So let's say, for an example, in a huge market, your business, your client, your customer, your brand has a 1% market share. Now, if their share of voice is 11%, you've got 10% excess share of voice, which means that you're going to grow by 0.5%. So you're going to go from 1% to 1.5% in a year. That's huge. That's adding 50% to the bottom line, to the revenue. So, and we can use that calculation. We can set that, and we can use that to make a case to the CFO, to the business leaders. Now, in B2B, it's 1.2%. I work primarily in B2B. Fantastic. So I can make a case for making a spend by talking about what the outcome will be in a way that typically marketers haven't been able to make the case for, or not enough have. So as a marketer, I work with objectives and key results. I'm sure we've all heard of KPIs, key performance indicators. KPIs are for agencies and they're for specialists. When you're talking about the business outcomes of marketing, you need to be talking about objectives and key results because they relate to the bottom line. So OKRs have to, they're smart. They have to be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So driving incremental sales will create greater revenues and profit. And you can forecast them through those three things I showed you just now: improving an underperforming stage of the funnel, improving an attribute performance, or excess share of voice. And it can be verified by revenue growth, greater market share, and better activation ROI. So I'll give you an example. So here, this is kind of like my little kind of sketch framework. The example objective here is to increase brand consideration by the end of the year. To do that, the execution, we might do a brand positioning review, we might refresh a website, we might do a digital and out-of-house ad campaign. We'll go away and get a budget. All this is made up, picked out of the sky. But that the budget for that might be 240,000 GBP as it is there. Should have put a dollar sign in front of that, right? But the key results that we'll be looking for is to grow the consideration stage of the funnel to improve it from 20% to 30%. So that's adding 10% at that stage. And on a funnel, that will follow down to sales. So we will be increasing sales by 10%. And so we can talk about what the incremental revenue is. So here, as an example, 640,000 GBP. So you can see that the return, longer term, is more than twice the investment. Now, you might get a better than two to one return on investment on digital or performance, but it's going to have its limits because you're only serving 5%. Here, we're talking large numbers over a large period of time that continue to give back. So this is all about making that case by talking business to the business rather than by talking marketing. And that's me. Thank you.
All right. So who's got questions? Who's got questions? that presentation just laid out to you, you want to study that, put it in your back pocket, and take it with you to your careers, because this is one of the greatest challenges that marketing leaders are facing. Companies that don't see the value of investing in brands because they love the performance. They think, they're addicted to the drugs of they don't recognize that only 5% of people are in the market. So who has any questions? Anybody put it in the chat. I know there's got to be somebody about anything. John can answer any questions about anything. He's got a career. He's worked for some business that you heard of, Lego for a time. He's worked for a number of great agencies. He's had his own agencies. So fire away, gang. Here's your chance.
I have a question about John's time at Lego.
Mm-hmm.
On your LinkedIn, it says you were part of the strategic growth opportunities, and you listed Adidas, Apple, and Nintendo. Is this when Lego was targeting the adult crowd for those type of products? And did any internal Lego brands like Bionicle or Ninjago reach your table for promotion opportunities like the Adidas or Nintendo promotions?
Oh, Richard, you're good. I like that. Note for everybody there. If ever you have an interview, do a quick look like that, because asking someone a question like that not only shows that you're kind of bright and eager, it plays to the ego. So I'm feeling all good about myself right now.
Well, you should, John. You should.
Yeah. So basically, I worked on the loyalty program, and what a lot of what I did was look to use those brand partnerships to grow membership of the program. Um, and by the way, if anybody has read How Brands Grow and thinks that, as some people do, it says that there's no such thing as loyalty. Absolutely not. As I've shown on that graph before, loyalty is the thing. And the biggest brands, you don't get much bigger in toys and collectibles than Lego. Loyalty is a big thing. So I did work with I didn't work with Bionicles. We did work with Dreams as that was being launched. So that was a new IP in Ninjago. But my work covered adults and children. And what I will say is that the by volume, by number of sets purchased, children were by far the biggest purchasers, or for children. But by revenue, it was adults. So we did a lot across both. But what's really, really useful about those kind of brand partnerships, and probably my favorite was with Nintendo, is if you've got suitable products that excite everybody, you can grow both sides of the market. So we did a campaign, and I take no credit. The campaign was running as I joined. But through the Nintendo loyalty program, you could gain, I think it was a Mario metallic keyring. Through the Lego campaign, you could get a metallic Luigi. Through both, you could earn points of the other. So you could then go through and make sure you got both of them. So it was a really magical way of growing both audiences. I hope that answers your question.
I got some other
Yes,
questions
thank
for
you.
you. All right, John, hold on a second. Let me pull the chat box up here. Okay. Whoops, hold on. Da, 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 da. How do you deal with failing to reach a goal after you've pitched ideas to a brand and it doesn't happen? And this is marketing. Things that sometimes you're positive it's going to work and it doesn't. You don't know what. So have you ever had to deal with expectations that didn't match results?
In the short term, yes. And basically what you need to do is, OKRs are long term, KPIs are short term. If the KPIs aren't performing or aren't showing up, then you need to review and basically keep on top of the KPIs, because it's an indicator, and it's an indicator that the results might not be coming. So as long as you're quick and agile, you should be able to either turn that around or explain it to the business. So you don't need to get to the end of the year and go, okay, let's just get these. Oh shit, we've just wasted 2 million. You can see it coming. And then what you do is you do a bit more research, or you revisit the research, and see what you're doing wrong. The reality is, if you start from research and diagnosis and everything stays the same, then everything should go according to plan. It's when things change, and you need to be agile enough to see that. So, one of the big words of the last kind of 5 years is pivot. Um, I hate that word just because it reminds me of being locked in my flat and not being allowed to go out or do anything as we went through lockdown. But lots of businesses had to pivot. And I had a client I was working with last year who we successfully launched them, and then they discovered that actually there were better opportunities somewhere else. So they completely pivoted, completely changed. And that's absolutely legitimate. So you need to stay on top of it and you need to stay alert. And I'd say the most important thing is you need to be objective and get your ego out of the room. If there's one thing that I would like to take away from marketing and agencies is subjectivity. It doesn't matter what you think or what you like. It only matters what works and what delivers.
You're not the customer. That's one of the best things, I've said, because, I had a case of this the other day, working with in the experience class, and one of our partners, I said, well, I said, what about advertising in the school paper? No one reads the school paper. I read the school paper. Well, you're the only one.
Yeah.
So, again, I'm not the customer. So that's good. So, Annalise asks, any recommendations for marketing students that are going out into the world, to get a leg up on the career, advice on how to, start your career off on the right foot?
So I would say find a mentor if you possibly can. Um, and actually sometimes all you need to do is ask. So I know lots and lots of senior marketers who are quite happy to mentor, and I've got a couple of people I'm mentoring myself. Um, I wish I'd asked for a mentor. So I've learned everything I've learned the hard way. So I've failed every single way you can fail, probably twice. But I've learned eventually. But that's why, look at this old face. I'm actually 12, but I feel old. So get a mentor if you can. Keep your eyes and ears open. Always be learning. Always be learning. There are some wonderful podcasts. There are some wonderful bloggers out there. Some wonderful books. Nothing is as useful as networking. Now, part of the reason for the hat, or part of the reason I persevered with the hat when I hated it, is that actually, whilst I can sit here and talk to, I don't know, 40 of you and be perfectly confident talking, and I've given talks on stage, I've done all sorts of things, I'm actually quite shy when it comes to networking. I don't like walking up to people I don't know and trying to start a conversation. So the hat works for me from that point of view. But going to networking events, seeing what's going on, seeing what your peers are doing, seeing what the seniors are doing, just being part of it is really, really useful. And the great thing about marketing is that we do genuinely have a community. We don't really on Twitter anymore. Um, but when we did, it was the best thing in the world, absolutely the best thing in the world. But I go to events all the time, and it's just about staying in touch and being relevant and being seen. Um, the other thing, probably worth saying, is that over here and in Australia, um, in particular, we are massive advocates of marketing effectiveness. So it's impossible to talk to a marketer or a strategist without them quoting Les Binet and Peter Field and all the people I've talked about today. In fact, sometimes it gets boring because you find people quoting different statements back to each other. I know that's not the case as much in the US. So to some extent, kind of you'll be you're being educated in a fantastic way and you're being taught what marketing really is, but you might find that not everybody's ready for that. Keep it in your back pocket. Know that you know and keep learning. And part of the job of marketing is persuasion. Now, I hate that word because people talk about advertising being about persuasion. I don't believe it is. I believe advertising is about creating a mindset of availability. But as a marketer, part of your job is persuading, whether or not it's persuading a client or persuading the board. And it's by doing that with proof and with data. So take it as an opportunity to improve marketing practices rather than top down land them in. Okay, but be there. You just need to be there and stay there. And you know what? LinkedIn has been fantastic for me. When Twitter became a dumpster fire, You know, kind of a lot of us who had been chatting all the time on Twitter moved over to LinkedIn, and it has always been a strong network for me. So in my career, I can count the number of times on zero fingers that I've got a job that I've had to go and apply for without there being some kind of network involvement. And I got lucky because I fell into creating my own agency early on. But yeah, the Lego role came about. I had to apply because they have a process, but I had worked with the hiring manager as my client in the past. My last agency role, I knew the people that run the agency because we have similar interests. So LinkedIn, networking, get a mentor.
How about this? Is there a specific brand case that you go to if somebody says, we're a performance marketing company. We know that brand stuff is always, is there one super strong case that you say, oh, hold on. I might not know everything, but damn it, I know this. I have this. I saw this brand works. Anything like that you go to, John?
There is, and it goes both ways, actually. So we look at the early days of Nike, where they built a brilliant brand platform around Just Do It. And then during and following the pandemic, they killed it all by going performance and absolutely destroyed their sales channels because they failed to make the connection between people buying direct from brand online and people not being able to buy in store. And they've found since, and they're now working really hard to correct, is that people have got used to going into sneaker stores, not seeing Nike and picking up other things. So they've lost their position in the market by misunderstanding the data. So at the moment, for all the right reasons of that brilliant strapline, that brilliant simple logo that we just immediately know, and basketball's not a thing over here. It's not a huge thing. I mean, it is over here, but Michael Jordan, me growing up, I knew Michael Jordan because of Nike. I had Air Jordans before I even realized that there was a basketball player called Michael Jordan. That again is the power of brand, and Nike managed to own that so well and managed to burn it down so quickly. So I think they're a great example.
Now, Claire's asking about what technology have you found yourself using the most in your career? And I think this is a good time to say, where's AI fit in that technology, and how has AI impacted the work you do, John? And how do you use AI? Because I do believe one advantage to my students getting hired is they'll sit down with hiring managers and they'll bring in more knowledge about AI and using it in marketing than the people they're talking to. And very well, the companies might not even be using AI or know how to use it. So can you shed any light on that or other technologies that you
Yeah,
always depend on?
100%. Kind of. I'm not even going to bother talking about legacy technology. I'm just going to talk about AI. AI is a daily tool for me now. Now, we've had, I was going to say 18 months. It probably hasn't even been that long. Maybe 5 minutes. I don't know how long it's been of, I'm going to use some French language now, of particularly agency marketers shitting the bed, thinking that AI is taking away our jobs. Now, I still haven't seen a suitable case for AI creating distinctive, memorable, and emotional creative, be it copy or be it visual. Now, interestingly, the Coca-Cola Christmas ad this year, and they ran both, they ran the traditional and they ran an AI version. The AI version scored really highly on System One's charts. It kind of absolutely killed it. It worked. It absolutely worked. But it worked because they've had 30 years of building up towards it. And if you're not sitting there and trying to count the number of fingers on a hand, you're probably not going to realize it's AI. Now, creatives will, and I will. And one of the things I always notice with AI is things dolly, they pan, things are constantly moving. It makes me sick. It makes me genuinely kind of travel sick. But the ad worked. But I don't see the value in that personally. I think we're going to get to a point where there's lots of mediocre creative. We know that there's a lot of really bad creative out there, and AI can be as mediocre people, and it can do it in much quicker time and for much less cost. So I think AI is going to take out the mediocre, but what we're going to find is that good creative, good human creative, is going to be the craft beer, the sourdough bread of the future. Okay, so it's going to retain and maybe even increase its value. Um, but I use it for research. I use it for mundane tasks. So, for example, I do outbound kind of outbound marketing and sales, which back in my old agency days, we had a human called Barry, and Barry used to sit there all day finding data, doing research, finding the right people, sending out emails. Within about 2 days of using Perplexity AI, I think it was I started using, um, I had in effect killed Barry. Which, if you'd met Barry, you'd probably celebrate it because Barry's a miserable bastard. But I had managed to kind of create automated tools with just very, very low cost point and click AI tools that were able to find directories, were able to run through and collect the data, was able to validate and verify the data and give me a contact list immediately. And so I use it for a lot of repetitive tasks and for research, and it's getting better. It's getting better and better for research. So, but I've used it, for example, um, I did some interviews recently for my client, which, as I said, they sell jewelry in the UK, and I got Perplexity AI, which is my favorite AI tool. I've got the pro version of it. I asked it to write me a script for an in-depth interview, and I described the business I was working for, and I described what I wanted to get out of it, and it gave me a script that I only needed to add one question to. Brilliant time saver. And it's also really good at summarizing. But again, you need to check it because sometimes it hallucinates. So this morning, I asked the same tool to compare my client to its number one competitor to tell me what external marketing advertising they were doing. And it reported back on not just the competitor, but a company with a similar name to the competitor that did something completely different. And even when I told it it got it wrong, which sometimes works, it still did it again. I also like to use it just for kind of internal stuff, really. So, when I post my blogs or my articles, or sometimes when I do talks, if they're a bit too bland and a bit too wordy, I'll just go into MS Copilot and just ask it to create a ridiculous image. And it's a bit of fun. But definitely learn AI, definitely learn practical AI. So the client I talked about earlier, Inversity, they at that time they were teaching practical AI training for 16 to 18-year-old students in the UK. They've now pivoted and they're working with B2B businesses because the opportunity is there. But it's definitely going to be a thing. It is already a thing, and I think my advice would be try to stay away from, as much as possible, the kind of the AI Cold War in a way. So we've got a situation at the moment where people are using AI to create CVs or resumes that are being judged by AI. The fuck's that about? I tell you, as someone that has employed dozens of people over the years, the things that stand out are the truly unique things. And it doesn't mean that you have to make a show of it. I employed someone once who, in their interest, said that they do a lot of work in their community. I was just like, who's that? I wonder what the community is. And got her in for an interview. She got the job. I went back and hired her years later for another agency I was at as well. So these, and here's me remembering that one line again. So kind of, I think it pays to realize what AI can do, but also what it can't do and what only you can do.
All right. Well, we go about 45 minutes on this. This is the last question we're going to ask. And then my students, as we leave, make sure we thank John for his time. And he's given you an opportunity to connect with him on LinkedIn. I'd advise you to do that. Certainly reach out if you didn't feel like asking questions, you were shy. Send him a direct message on LinkedIn, or
Please,
send him
yeah.
an email. He's very open to helping my students and students. He's a real mentor in the industry, and I can see it on his LinkedIn page. So the final question is, what is, again, I know you've worked in marketing a long time and you have experience in US, Australia, and of course your United Kingdom. How do you see the differences in marketing in those marketplaces, England and Australia and the United States? I have my opinion, but I want to hear yours.
Wow. Okay. So there's a number of things. Kind of just volume of numbers is one. So, the US is huge, and people outside the US that haven't experienced it directly are often just kind of confused by how I'm just gonna come out and say it, and then I'll qualify it, right? By how ignorant people in the US seem to be about anything that isn't the US. But what they don't realize is that they live in a state that's the same size as our not only our country, but my collection of countries. The Great Britain is the size of one state, and there's 4 countries in that, right? Now we're so small that in our national news they talk about road closures. So just getting a difference of that scale is huge. And one thing that I learned working for a US agency is how enormous regional brands can be. So, I did some stuff with Southeast Grocers around Atlanta. And they're probably bigger than most of our nationwide grocers over here. So understanding the scale is very different. And in Australia, the land mass is huge, but actually the population is relatively small. So we've got those kind of geographic and those kind of differences there. But I think there's also a maturity in terms of a difference in maturity of the consumer mindset. So I learned this primarily when I was in promotional marketing. So in the US, we'd go out and go, oh, this is a sweeps. We're doing a sweepstake to promote a movie. In the UK, and it gets worse when you go into Europe, France being the absolute worst of all of them, we like to think that we're beyond that. We don't want to be told it's a sweeps. We want to be told it's a game or a competition, and it's just less mature, I think, in a way. And the French don't like the idea of promotions at all. But also you've got the thing with marketing effectiveness. So at the moment, some of the greatest marketing brains are in and around Australia. So Mark Ritson, who is a brilliant writer, I've done his mini MBA course. He's an excellent professor. He's British, but he's lived in Australia for a number of years. And of course, Ehrenberg Bass are Australian. I think in the UK we probably picked up and run with it more, certainly than the US. And I know a few people in the US who are huge advocates of marketing effectiveness. And if any of you listen to podcasts, I'd definitely recommend listening to On Strategy, the On Strategy Showcase. Fergal O'Carroll is a brilliant strategist. It's a fantastic podcast that talks about brand cases and the unlock in all of them. It's probably become my favorite now. But I mean, he's an Irish guy originally, but he's based out in Chicago, and he talks about kind of the US being behind the curve on marketing effectiveness. But there's lots of reasons for that, and in some cases, it's about remuneration. It's about how people are rewarded. So, and I found this at the Lego Group. There were KPIs that related to people's bonuses that actually weren't necessarily in the best interests of the business or the team. But who's going to break those? So if you're being rewarded by, I don't know, selling more media space, are you really going to care about creative being able to create more effective branding and marketing? Probably not. So those are probably the big differences I've seen. I've bored Tom, haven't I? Running back. There you go.
Sorry about that. Okay, that was long story short. There's a restaurant in Atlantic City called Chef Vola's, and I've been trying to get a reservation for that. So I'm going down to my high school wrestling tournament, and so they just called. When they call, you got to grab that reservation. So I
Did you get it?
apologize. Anyway,
Did
I
you get
really
the
appreciate
reservation?
Oh yeah, we got it. So me and my wife are going to check it out. I mean, if you follow my Instagram, I always post up my food and I give up my reviews. I tell my students I'm a pizza influencer. I got over
I
7,000
saw that.
people
Yeah.
following me. And if you look at my LinkedIn profile, it says I'm a New York pizza style expert. So that's my pitch, and I stay to it. All right. So thank you, John. That was kick-ass amazing.
You're welcome.
Students, I hope you appreciate this. I hope you take this advice with you and use it. And so, again, thank you. And everybody, as we leave, say thank you and connect with John. And again, John, thanks so much, man. You're awesome, dude. Thank
It's
you.
been an honor. You're welcome. Thank you, everybody.
There are a lot of thank yous.
Thank
They're
you.
saying thanks in the chat box.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
You can take yourself off mute and
Thank
say
you.
that you're
Thank
leaving.
you.
Thank you.
All right,
Right.
John, that was
Thank
killer.
you.
Amazing.
All right. Fantastic, man. John, I appreciate it, dude.
Not too fast?
No, dude, I love it. dude, again, you laid out the meat of the matter. There was no fat on that one. That was all, that was main course.
Brilliant.
And so, like I said, I tell the kids, you want to study this and make sure you understand it, because if you do, you'll have a full, you're gonna have a leg up on other people that do
I'll
what
take
you
this
do.
fucking hat off now, Tom.
Yeah, so you can take it off. All right, my brother. Well, again, I'm going to put something up on LinkedIn. Again, I thank you for your time. It is the most valuable asset in your life.
Anytime, honestly, anytime. If there's
I'll take you
anything
up
or any
on it, because
interest,
I teach branding now every semester, so there'll be another request, my brother.
perfect.
All
Sounds
right,
good.
man. Have a great night. Thanks again, John.
too.
Great
Have
to
a good
finally
day.
meet you, my friend. And
Yeah,
one of
you
these
too.
days, my brother-in-law, we're gonna get over there and visit him, and I'm gonna force a marketing meetup somewhere in some bar in London. I promise.
Sounds good.
Before I die, and, within the next, as long as I'm living, I'm gonna probably retire in about 3 years of teaching, and then, then we'll get together and celebrate.
First drink is on me.
All right. Well, then the second, third, or fourth are on me. All right, brother. See you later.
Take
Thanks.
care. See you.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye bye.